Hi everyone, Kelvin here, Stereo Review X. That's my channel reviewing retro speakers and amps, turntables, and it's all about the sound basically. I just want to say, something about myself. I'm just mad about sound. I'm really mad about it, and that's led me to go in depth in all these issues about cone materials and boxes and what have you, which I don't know in an utterly scientific way, but I kind of know out of experience. And I spend an inordinate amount of time, particularly as a teenager, testing things, not being scientific, but just listening and changing and listening and changing. And I think I got quite good ears out of that, so I can spot things quite quickly about sounds, So anyway, what we're going to do today is I'm going to have a look at these speakers. I will talk about the sound of them, but I'm also going to do a thing about how construction changed, what affects sound, things about how companies sort of manipulate you, or basically there's some companies, and Tannoy isn't one of these, by the way, but some companies do things that they start with something really good, and once they get a reputation, the standard goes down, but the people carry on buying because they made this reputation. So there, I said it now anyway. But let me just say a bit about. I'm just talking generally about speakers here today, and what makes them good and bad. But I just want to say a few things about Tannoy. Tannoy, super old company, really old company. You may not know if you're not, I don't know if this is the same around the world, but in Britain, people say things like, they'll say, I heard it over the Tannoy. Old people anyway, because Tannoy used to make the loudspeakers for like railway stations and stuff like that. So in England, they would say, I heard it on the Tannoy. I don't know if that's the same around the world, but Tannoy, really old company, made some fantastic speakers, And if you look at the history of Tannoy, you will see that it's compared to a lot of companies, they seem to have been mostly unchanged in their sort of structure. They haven't just been bought up by some conglomerate. Maybe not until recently, but they seem to maintain their independence from what I can see. So many companies that started in the 70s, say like Kef, a lot of those companies, Kef Monitor Audio, started in England, and other companies started in America. Well, now you'll find that all of these audio companies are owned by a couple of very large companies that own 7 or 8 brands, yeah? So, it's like soap powder. I don't know what that's like around the world, but in England, there's 20 different soap powders, but it's owned by 2 companies. So that goes on in the hi-fi world. But Tannoy, from what I can tell, seem to have maintained their independence. So I'm not here to slag off Tannoy, but I am going to use this speaker as a bit of an example of things I don't like, or things that went a bit wrong, and I'll tell you why. But so I'm going to take this bass driver out, we'll look inside, talk about construction and what's happened, and I will talk about the sound. So 1 second, I'll just cut and you can see inside. So, okay, got this bass driver out. Quickly, I'll talk about, let me just tell you, this is a Tannoy System 2. I'm really having trouble on the internet finding dates for this, but it's got to be 80s plus, 80s, 90s. It's actually rated at over 100 watts. You can give it over 100 watts. And I will tell you, if you turn these speakers up loud, they don't like it much. It's because they're small and the construction. See, this is where the kind of the build quality has an impact. But anyway, so what you have here, I'll bring the camera in just a sec. What you have here is vinyl on, in this case, chipboard with a different, actually double skin on the front. So 2 pieces of wood. That top piece is MDF. So the front is actually 2 skins of timber. One 15mm chipboard, we'll say 15mm, and one 15mm MDF on the front. But the rest of the cabinet is like 15, 12mm chipboard with a vinyl wrap. Do you know what I mean? It's not veneer. So I put this Bowers and Wilkins speaker here from 1972. Now that, you know, that veneer that it's got, it's actually not just a visual thing, well, you know, it's visually good, but it's also like a taut skin on top of another, that's on top of ply, I believe, yeah? So this is a much more rigid thing. What's the point of that? The point of that is when that bass speaker is really vibrating, you know, this will only vibrate so much, and it will vibrate, and you know, this is one of the whole issues with speaker manufacture, is to try and cut out all the vibrations, reverberation coming out of the box. But having that veneer and being a stronger construction, if I just tap this, okay, it's a higher note, yeah, just a higher note. It basically means it's more rigid. It's got a higher resonates at a higher frequency. So when you turn up the sound, this one, it's not going to shake so much. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, let me bring the camera in and I'll show you in detail about this speaker. 1 second. Again, I'm not slagging off or dissing Tannoy, because, you know, they're a very well respected company. And so interesting, let's have a look here. These pieces of, let's look inside, I'll show you. So if we look inside here, you can see the double skin on the outside face, yeah? Well, this is where they've gone, we've got to strengthen this, yeah? Because we can't make this whole thing out of chipboard. So, you know, they've tried, and, you know, obviously it's all about costs, you know. So double skin there, but on the sides, let me see if you can see, in there, you know, that's chipboard with a vinyl wrap around the rest of it. Now, interesting, if we look in here, see they've braced the whole thing with a sort of cross of chipboard bracing, and that cross, they've got these lumps of blue tack, yeah, or it's like blue tack, you know. I haven't put those on. It's the sort of thing I would have done. And that's just to try and keep things rigid and not moving, you know, cutting out reverberations. But there you have it. So, you know, this is part of this construction that isn't so good, that went on after, you know, started probably late 70s into the 80s. And this is I'll talk about the sound about these in a minute. Metal dome tweeter, you know, those got very popular in the 80s because they wouldn't, they could go to louder sounds and they wouldn't have trouble of overheating, and the domes are tougher. And I think technically it might read better, but there's a downside to a lot of those metal dome tweeters, particularly, you know, if you can hear it, you know, and you can't always hear it, and they got better, those metal dome tweeters. But anyway, that's that. And what else? Oh, here's another thing worth noting. So these bass speakers are held in. Now that, you know, that's just a wood screw, yeah? So it used to be they'd have a steel sleeve with a sort of bracket on the back, and that would be like a nut and bolt, and you'd screw that in really tight. So I'm never too happy to see wood screws, to be honest. I mean, you know, certain companies did use them in the 70s too, but a lot of them used metal, yeah, metal on metal. So, you know, that's another one of the sort of, they just do these tiny things to save money, you know. Okay, other thing worth noting on these Tannoy is it is bi-wireable, which is, you know, that's a plus for sure, which I did a review on that recently. Okay, that's about it. Let me put this back and I'll just tell you about the sound of these speakers, and just something also about, you know, the way companies develop ranges, let's say, or not. Let's say that. Okay, I mean, the thing is, and again, this is probably their cheapest, bottom of the range speaker. And Tannoy made tons of brilliant speakers. But just talking generally, quite a few companies I'm well aware of would start making something really good, yeah? When they entered the market, they would make some real quality things. And then they'd get a reputation, and everyone would say, oh, that company's great. 5 years later, they think, well, we've got this great reputation, now we need to make some proper money or more money. So, we'll use that reputation, we'll make some things that aren't quite so good, and people will buy them anyway because we've got this great reputation. And as long as we don't do that forever, we'll get away with it. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, two things crop into my mind, right? One is the first NAD amp. Well, it wasn't NAD's first amp, the 3020, which is a sort of classic amp in the hi-fi world. It was a super duper amp, just super duper for the price, and just made a lovely sound, really nice. Subsequent NAD amps weren't as good, and you think, well, why couldn't you just stick to that formula? Why couldn't you just, keep that amp for 20 years? And, well, whatever reason they didn't, but, you might assume that they are just trying to save a bit of money on components or something like this. But this is a pattern you see. Early Mission speakers, early 70s, the quality was good, the build quality was good, went off the boil in the 80s. I mean, there's other things about manufacturing costs and, currencies that make a difference. But anyway, I think it's true that companies could make something good, get a reputation, and then capitalize on that. It's capitalism, I guess. Okay. Let me just talk about the sound of these speakers, which I've been playing quite a lot if you want to hear about it. Generally speaking, I would do it like this. I won't do all the songs the way I normally do, but you get quite a big full sound, yeah? Sound-wise, it's fairly bassy. For a small box, it's fine, you know what I mean? It's not like, it's not low in bass, yeah? And it's fairly uniform in its delivery. Now, here's the interesting thing. I don't like much these speakers, and I put them on with very nice front end stuff, because I give them the best chance possible, and they're not objectionable, yeah? I mean, they have got a metal dome tweeter, which is a little thin. It's not nasty and spiky, which, some early metal dome tweeters really were. It's not nasty in that way, but it's just a little bit thin. But the real problem is they don't do any one thing very good or good. They do it all okay. They really do. They do it all okay, and it's really not bad. But the treble is a little bit on the thin side. The vocals aren't just quite, they're not authentic. They're not getting me. I'm not getting involved. That's the point. They're not allowing me to get involved in the music. And the bass is quite good. It's a bit soft. It's a port. It's a bit of a bouncy box, but it ain't bad. But the point is, there's just nothing great about them. That's all it is, And this is the funny thing about stereo equipment, is that if something does one thing really great, like these BMWs, just got a sublime mid-range. It's sublime. And then you can get totally involved in it. But if a speaker it's okay in every department, but not good in one, that to me is a no-no. I mean, that to me is a lose-lose. Now there's nothing great for me to get involved in. It's average across the board. So there's nothing like going, And the point is, I personally, I don't get involved. I don't enjoy it. I want to turn the music off. That's literally what happens between speakers I don't like much and speakers I do like. I want to listen to music more, you know. So, yeah, so probably is that about it. I just wanted to give a sort of thoughts about speakers generally and sound generally. And, you know, again, not slagging those off. They're fine. And, you know, if you wanted to buy them, I don't think you'd pay much money at all. You know, you probably pay about £50. That's about 60 US dollars. And also the other thing, of course, I forgot to mention this. They just don't look good. Yeah. This vinyl stuff, you don't want them in the front room. It doesn't make you go, oh, I don't know, you know, the visuals, you cannot escape the visuals to a certain extent, you know, that, you know, and I did a thing with my own mind when I was listening to these speakers, and I thought, I try to imagine that this sound was coming out of a spectacularly expensive mahogany box, you know, a new speaker that cost £2,000. What would I think about? Am I thinking differently because it doesn't look very good, you know? And I tried to do that in my head, and I thought, well, if this was a £2,000 speaker, I'd be disappointed, you know. So, but all I'm saying is sometimes it's tricky, even with someone like me who's like trying their hardest to do this, right, to totally remove the visuals. Totally remove it, because you kind of look at them and go, hey, I don't expect this to sound any good, and I'm not feeling good about it, you know. Anyway, okay, so a bit of an unusual one today. So if you don't know my channel, there's tons of reviews of other equipment where I go into a better kind of detail on sound about things that are probably pretty good. Okay, thanks. Bye for now.